Welcome to Words on Music with your Anchorage Symphony Orchestra. I'm Susan Wingrove-Reed, the principal keyboard player and also the education consultant for the orchestra. And wow, do we have a really interesting program to talk about now. Our November 2nd exploration of the earth and sound and humanity. It is a glorious program. We will begin with an excerpt of a piece that our previous music director and beloved colleague, Randall Craig Fleischer, wrote called Echoes. And we will be doing an excerpt called Athabascan Prayer. In August 2020, the sudden passing of our music director, Randy, broke the symphony's hearts. His passion for music, his composing abilities, his connections with people, our orchestra grew so much under his leadership. He was a busy resident and guest conductor all over the world and arranged and composed elements that involved the fusion of rock and classical music. I was able to attend on Broadway Rocktopia and able to talk with Randy right after the performance. He had an amazing handprint on our musical lives. In 2008, the ASO was thrilled to present the premiere of Echoes. And it also premiered in Washington, D.C. at the National Museum of the American Indian. It is a regular feature to do an excerpt from Echoes at our popular annual and free neighborhood concerts. The piece Echoes, when we did the premiere in 2008, Randy contributed something to the program notes and wrote the following: that creating Echoes, he said, was one of the most satisfying experiences of my musical life. I was so honored to receive the commission. I was given clear instructions. As part of my agreement with the partners, I needed to see and hear a number of private performances of Indigenous music. I taped these sessions and asked questions about the history of each song or dance. In Barrow, I even got up and danced along. This was quite amusing to the dancers, he said. In making these journeys and studying the music, I met many wonderful artists and found their passion for their culture inspiring. This was a journey of discovery for me, of new music and of new friends. I decided to write Echoes in a musical language that was accessible, so audiences would enjoy the piece on a first hearing. I had to make choices about which songs and dances I thought would be most exciting for an audience to hear. In the complete score, there are 6 musical scenes. What we will experience at our upcoming concert is scene 3, which is the Alaskan scene, and opens with the beautiful Athabascan melodies sung in the traditional language of Anchorage's First Peoples. It comes from a Dena'ina song about hunting beavers. We are honored to open the concert in November with Randy's heartfelt music, a tribute to his much-loved Alaska journey, and a perfect beginning to a concert that will focus on music celebrating the Earth's incredible beauty. John Luther Adams' work, An Atlas of Deep Time, has deep roots in Alaska and with the Anchorage Symphony Orchestra. In 1978, Adams moved to Fairbanks and lived in a cabin in the woods for almost 40 years. In the 70s and 80s, he was a full-time environmental activist and eventually turned his focus to music. He was the principal timpani player and percussionist in the Fairbanks Symphony and the Arctic Chamber Orchestra in the 1980s. And the ASO premiered several of his works with Randy. Randy would be thrilled that we are doing An Atlas of Deep Time by his friend John Luther Adams. In 2014, Adams began to divide his time between New York and the deserts in Mexico. His compositions explore a lot of genres: TV, film, theater, voice, electronics, and the classical orchestra. He said one of his main influences was Frank Zappa, who was a self-taught composer, and his music spanned rock, jazz, pop, and fusion. Sounds like Randy too. Plus, he loved the work of 20th century composers like John Cage and Edgar Varese. For the past few years, Adams has been exploring something that he describes as sonic geography, and that is the perfect term to apply to the music that we will experience together at our November concert. In 2014, Adams won the Pulitzer Prize for a piece, Become Ocean, which had been commissioned by the Seattle Symphony, and it won the 2015 Grammy for Best Contemporary Classical Composition. The massive soundscape, An Atlas of Deep Time, was commissioned by the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra in 2022. Adams seeks to explore new questions and old questions in fresh ways through this music. He seeks to explore space, stillness, time, and the elemental forces of nature. He reflected on this new work, writing, "I am walking through a desert on the bottom of the sea. A glint catches my eye. I stop and pick it up. White coral, a shard of a colony of creatures that lived here 300 to 500 million years ago. I can't comprehend that amount of time. 80 to 90% of the Earth's history was already written in stone. An Atlas of Deep Time is grounded in my desire, amid the turbulence of human affairs, to hear the older, deeper resonances of the earth. The piece is scored for a huge orchestra, arrayed in 6 instrumental choirs surrounding the listeners. Like the geologic layers of rocks beneath our feet, the densities and textures, the instrumental and harmonic colors are always changing, yet somehow the substance is the same." In an interview with the Aspen Times prior to what was the second performance of this work after the premiere by South Dakota, he said that, "For me, everything is an adoration of the earth. Everything we think, we imagine, or create derives from the sensuous world that we inhabit. I've been reading geology books, and I've been reading the rocks on the mountain where I live as a kind of scripture and a way of remembering my less than an eye blink presence in the immensity of time on Earth." Alaskans can especially relate to a splendid review by Kyle Gann. "This music perfectly echoes the landscapes he loves. Relentless, larger than human scale, yet gorgeous, a quiet chaos of colors suffused with light. It's not a climate everyone could live in, but for those who want to bathe their ears in an aural aurora borealis while staying warm inside, it's a spiritual odyssey well worth taking." After the intermission, we will continue with our salute to the world, the earth, and the people. Beethoven's Symphony No. 6, the Pastoral. The sixth was a huge contrast to the epic struggle and triumph of his Fifth Symphony, and they were both written at around the same time. The sixth has the enormous strength of someone who knows how to relax. It occurred in its own premiere in a ridiculous concert that happened on a December night when a theater which was not heated at all. The Fifth and Sixth Symphonies were premiered, plus his Fourth Piano Concerto, plus his Choral Fantasy, and plus a few extra arias. The concert was over 4 hours long. There was no heat in the theater, and it was an under-rehearsed orchestra. Yet the audience persisted. Beethoven gave the Sixth Symphony its nickname, the Pastoral, and it was his only 5-movement symphony and his only programmatic symphony. In a short written guide to the work, he noted, "The first movement, pleasant feelings, arriving in a countryside. The second, a scene by the brook. The third, a merry gathering of country people, interrupted by the fourth piece, which is Thunder and Storm, which breaks into the fifth piece, Feelings combined with thanks to the deity." Famed orchestral annotator Edward Downes stated, "This symphony suggests that his worship of nature had more to do with love than awe. In the utter simplicity and peace of the symphony, there is something beatific. The way he dwells with tireless, repetitious wonder over the simplest of his loveliest phrases suggests the moments when time stands still for us too. And this comment in particular resonated with me in thinking about our experience with the John Luther Adams piece. Time will stop. The Brook is one of my favorite movements. It's a tranquil scene with lovely rocking triplets in the strings that perfectly portray gently flowing water. And at the very end, you hear famous imitations of three bird calls: a nightingale, the flute, a thrush, the oboe, and a cuckoo, the clarinet. And another of my favorite movements from the symphony, the merrymaking of the country folk, paints a boisterous musical picture of peasants dancing. In 1819, Beethoven's friend Anton Schindler recalled, Beethoven asked me if I had noticed how village musicians often played in their sleep, occasionally letting their instruments fall and keeping quite still, waking up with a start, getting in a few vigorous blows, usually in the right key, and then dropping off to sleep again. A memorable portion of the middle section is a caricature of an incompetent bassoon player who appears to play only two notes over and over. The cellos and violas get to joyfully mock the bassoon. So those are just a few highlights of many. And I'm sure audience members will recognize, if they are not thinking of this ahead of time, that many of us were introduced to excerpts, big chunks of this work, when we saw the epic film Fantasia with its incredible animation. So if you want some joy before you come to the live concert hall, you might try to watch Fantasia again and enjoy those clips with the amazing animation. This is a concert that has special meaning for many of us in the orchestra family. Remembering Randy's affection for presenting new works to Anchorage audiences and to Alaska, and Randy's passion for Beethoven. And the link between Elizabeth and Randy, who were good friends in life and will remain friends forever, of course, is an absolutely astoundingly warm thing to have to add to the icing on this cake of a glorious concert. Do not miss our event on November 2nd. It will be unforgettable. You can take that from me. Thank you for supporting your Anchorage Symphony Orchestra, and we'll see you in the concert hall.